Look at this beauty. Some games just feel like coming back home, you know? Even if it's just to gaze upon the vast canvas that is a Paradox Grand Strategy map. Now you may not think old Bessie here, good old reliable Big Berta, looks too hot compared to the likes of the younger models. But you know, times they are a-changing, and never was this more true than for Crusader Kings 2 and Paradox Development Studios back in 2012. Because back then, just little more than a decade ago, little did Paradox know that CK2 would become their springboard to mass appeal, one of their holy grails so to speak, despite indeed looking like this. But you know, when you consider that Victoria 2 looked like this just 2 years earlier, but looking positively 10 years older, yeah, CK2 was a big leap forward, okay? And I don't care who knows, except I do since I'm making this video. Now these days, CK2 doesn't hold a candle to the popularity of CK3, which naturally kind of cannibalized the former, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't care about it, because CK2 is still unique and distinct enough from CK3 that it actually feels like a completely different experience at this point, and in more ways than one. So why am I even talking about CK2? Well, because frankly, some of CK2's best features have yet to be implemented in CK3, and because it remains one of my favorite games. And I thought it was time to pay some tribute to and put some respect on that CK2 name. Because frankly, it deserves it, and still brings its own charm and strategy RPG immersion to this day. If you know CK3, the overall gist of CK2 is the exact same. It's character-focused, it takes place in the Middle Ages, it's multi-layered, meaning more or less everyone are in a vassal-liege relationship, unless they themselves is the highest liege lord in the realm. It's chock full of events and decisions, both random and not, to make each playthrough feel unique. And above all, it's a freaking blast to play, as it allows you to assume the role of quite literally anyone in this entire world. From emperors to kings, dukes, counts, and even merchant republics can be played here. But not theocracies, that's where we draw the line for some reason. Probably because they technically don't produce heirs. Truly, CK2 and CK3 are conceptually identical, so the difference lies purely in the details, but there are as a matter of fact many of those. Now despite CK3 having added some pretty great stuff in the past few years, my personal favorite additions being hybrid cultures and tours and tournaments, there are many ways in which CK2 still reigns supreme. And I'm going to show you the 10 most important reasons why CK2 is still wrinkling my brain in the best way. Number 1, bam, right off the bat, Charlemagne start date. CK2 not only offers that 1066 starting date, not only that 867 Viking goodness, but yes, also a certified year of our Lord 769, where the medieval world is even younger, arguably even more tumultuous, and definitely a lot more Charlemagne-y, because this campaign is all about the mane of the Charles himself. Now a bit of a disclaimer. This campaign can certainly be tough if specific events don't fire, or if you're suddenly facing down the Luger of 1,000 infidel Germans, or indeed the curved swords of the Islamic invaders to the south. But the overall gist is that as far as owning a large empire goes, Charlemagne's campaign is a lot more structured and quite a bit easier than most rulers out there, all things considered. You're fairly certain to inherit the other half of the Karling realm after all, meaning the Frankish Empire is fairly likely to be reunited within a few years. This gives you a clear advantage in Europe, but of course you must still contend with the very split religious and cultural landscape here. In addition, there's no telling what will happen after Charlemagne's death. Of course, as seen in the 867 start date, there is no singular Frankish empire, but quite literally 6 different kingdoms based on it, filled with Karling dynasty members. As such, you'll still need to play CK2 as you do, but the Charlemagne start date, at least for West Francia, is all about that Frankish flavor, and that's why I love it so much. Of course, you also get the full package here, so you may of course assume the role of the Eastern Romans, the Abbasids, and so on and so forth. I think this start date lends a ton of new immersion to CK2, and it would be awesome to see this time period reflected in CK3 as well. Number 2, bam, Byzantium Imperial Government. Speaking of the Eastern Romans, Byzantium had a whole DLC dedicated to it with Legacy of Rome, which added a bunch of new Byzantine events and flavor. But one of the coolest things in my eyes was the new imperial government form, which only Byzantium begins with. You see, the imperial government is the most centralized a government can become, does not function like a feudal government, and is only available to the Byzantine or Roman empires. In essence, the imperial government bases its succession system around an imperial election, where the various powerful individuals vote for their chosen candidate based on their prestige and other traits, making for an entirely different system where favors and opinions have to be swayed to maintain the emperorship. In addition, you're not restricted to simply owning castles and baronies anymore, but may hold any city holding too, making for potentially finance-focused playthroughs. There's more to this system, but what I love in particular is how it mixes so well with the imperial administration law, which to other factions potentially takes centuries to unlock, which allows you the opportunity to base your empire on a system of viceroyalties instead of hereditary dukes and kings. You see, with a viceroyalty, you may hand out temporary rule of higher titles to your vassals, hoping to ensure that no single vassal of yours ever becomes too powerful or amasses too much wealth. This obviously provides the emperor with a lot of power, meaning the risk of being deposed or the rewards of being chosen become even greater. I love how this makes Byzantium feel unique in comparison to every other faction out there, and it still trounces the way Byzantium is handled in CK3, for now anyway, as things just might change this year. Number 3, bam! Retinues and required navies. One fairly small yet simultaneously massive feature CK2 has that CK3 did away with in some way is the concept of personal retinues. Yes, CK3 continues the concept with men-at-arms, and even though the overall CK3 military system might be better, retinues in particular is something I miss from CK2. You see, retinues, rather than just raising levies from your own domain and or those of your vassals, enable you to raise a personal host, which is always raised. Yes, you heard that correctly. A professional army made up of actual specialized infantry and cavalry that's always at the ready. Of course, retinues are restricted not just by your own rank and technology and or buildings, but also by your coin purse. Retinues are expensive, mind you, and the upkeep will surely be more than any average ruler can handle at first. But after a while, you may just find the opportunity to invest. And more than for just fighting foreigners, the retinue is especially good at keeping your own vassals at bay, since you're now increasing your own personal guard, so to speak. Of course, so too can they, but that's another matter entirely. All in all, I don't just enjoy the visual clarity of having your army as permanent 3D models, but I love not having to raise it, and the RPG value of tinkering with how you wish your retinue to be composed. I also very much appreciate the immersive and strategic value of having navies be a thing. Because while there is no naval warfare, you need navies to take your armies across the seas, meaning you need to have access to ports and the goal to maintain your ships. It's a little thing, but it definitely means a lot to me. Number 4, bam! 2D versus 3D portraits. Over time, I've grown accustomed to how CK3 handles portraits. I can definitely see the appeal of a moving character that can also gesture, and in the right lighting and the correct pose, etc., CK3 can look pretty damn endearing, and it is impressive how modular these characters are. But, and this is a pet peeve of mine, it can also look pretty darn goofy, especially with how characters acting as though they're children's actors in a play or something, making for a less immersive experience. And even though they surely can look weird as well, there is something about those 2D portraits in CK2 that I prefer. Because while it feels like CK3 has gone the goofy way by intention, CK2 is only really goofy by visual limitation, but made better due to a customization option and the randomness of genetics. There's also something about a 2D portrait that can never go truly wrong, and that can hold on to a sense of seriousness that a 3D portrait cannot. It has to be said though that CK2's portraits got a massive makeover as time went on, and now features much better drawn faces, hair and equipment, with a wide range of facial and clothing combinations. I also actually enjoy the fact that you can't just equip your character with whatever you want like in CK3, which to me felt extremely jarring seeing as everything else is RPG based. But in CK2, your character pretty much wears what they're supposed to, with kings wearing crowns lower dukes or counts could only dream of, and you're actually automatically wearing armor when you're leading armies at war. Number 5, bam! Immersive UI and event fatigue. Closely related to this is the UI for events, which I find to be so much easier on the eyes than in CK3. First of all, the event images are always beautifully drawn in a very unique style, a style that's actually meant to be immersive and often mysterious or awe-inspiring, and sometimes just nice. It really helps to bring forth that RPG medieval ambience you otherwise wouldn't get, and in a map game like this, that's important. Contrast this with CK3's window-dominating pop-ups, which, after a while, kind of tire me out. Not least of all because I feel like they often make me read a lot more and a lot more of the same, and the CK2 events just make me less fatigued and keep me in the game. Add on to that the fact that quite literally every CK3 event window has a character or 2 or 4 in them, again often looking goofy as heck, and CK2 events win hands down, especially since they actually keep that awesome soundtrack uninterrupted. Number 6, and bam, we have music and sounds, baby. CK2 legitimately offers up one of the best soundtracks in gaming history, with dozens of tracks that are long, melodic, and vary from calm and collected to epic and blood-pumping. There is no other medieval focus game with this kind of varied and overall fantastic music collection. Not one. And yet, CK3 kind of squanders it to an extent. It's taken a completely different musical direction, offering the more melodic tunes during events, only to cut them off when the event is over, even though the game's definitely gotten a bit better with time and a few musical updates. CK3's music isn't necessarily bad, it just doesn't hold a candle to what CK2 offers, which is why I often find myself having to use CK2 music mods in CK3. Shout out to the Crusader Kings 2 music mod by Manic Mayo, by the way. Pay specific attention to the awesome sound design of CK2's UI, by the way, which changes based on where you're located and gives this audio-visual image a completely different and vibrant tone. Number 7, and bam, we have councils and laws. In CK3, the council is vital to keep certain vassals happy and at bay, and of course function as a way to keep your government working and enabling various abilities. These things also go for CK2's council. But in CK2, the council members are actually powerful, and depending on your laws, which there are many of and which are important by the way, allow your council members to hold sway over your kingdom. That's right, council members actually vote on law changes now, meaning there are situations where you cannot enact a law because the council in total doesn't want it. Depending on the laws, they can even prevent you from declaring war, as each council member has their own changing personalities and views on the kingdom and the ruler. To mitigate this, favors can be exchanged, opinions can be changed, and loyalists can be installed, meaning the council becomes a vital center of government that's actually another point of immersive friction in your campaign, and you feel all the more powerful when the power of the council is curtailed in vital matters. Laws, as mentioned, are a lot more plentiful than before, and governs everything from war declaration to women's rights, investiture, succession, taxes, administration, and so much more. It's a shame that CK3 doesn't offer this amount of depth, even though it has to be said that some of these factors have in CK3 been transferred to a combination of overall crown authority and the religious side of things, with say the role of women in society. But I do like CK2's approach better at the end of the day. Number 8, and bam, we have our map modes. If there's one thing I like about Paradox games, it is their granularity, and this remains true for the map, the place where everything happens. CK2 has a plethora of map modes, allowing you to see everything from the regular political map to terrain, direct vassals, de jure vassals, diplomatic relations, defensive pacts, epidemics, economics, trade zones, opinions, religion, culture, and so much more. Now, some of these are available in CK3 as well, but not nearly all of them. And while I do appreciate the dynamism of CK3's main map mode, the fact that you can't make it stay the same, as in always terrain or always political, sucks. And even mods themselves can't make it justice because the map itself isn't made for it. And as for the map, it's kinda weird actually, because even though CK3 does objectively look more modern and impressive, there is a charm to CK2's map, especially when zoomed down, that sticks with me. And I think it's partially owed to the clear and distinct borders, terrain, and landmasses, and because of how it shades in the unknown, which for some reason CK3 stopped doing completely above the lowest level of viewpoint. That is something my map mode for CK3 fixes, by the way, a mod I can't play without, so if CK3's map's been bugging you, feel free to check it out and get a CK2-like experience. Number 9, bam, we have the more buildings. One thing that's bugged me about CK3 is the way buildings work, because you can't really have that many per settlement, even though the options for a varied region might technically be there. But in CK2, the only limitation is gold and or culture or technology or geography, as every building can be built as long as conditions are met. This means that there's no "you can only build 4 buildings in this barony" limit to stop you from feeling that growth and playing tall, and I truly appreciate that. And finally, we have number 10, bam, all the other stuff. There is still so much lacking in CK3 that CK2 has a plenty in the vanilla experience. I'm talking coronations, which is strange because it should really be included in tours and tournaments, baptisms, merchant republics, holy orders in monks and mystics, papal investiture with a cardinal system, and so on and so forth. Now, with all of this being said, there is by now a lot that CK3 offers that CK2 just doesn't, and I personally have a hard time going back to CK2 without my beloved CK3 culture and religious system these days. But keeping that in mind, CK2 is still a fantastic game that frankly offers so much to anyone willing to dive in, which is technically easier than ever since the base game is free, and you can get all DLC for a monthly membership for like $5 a month, which can be cancelled at any time. So if you want the best medieval strategy experience of all time, you physically can't look further than right here. These are some of the biggest reasons why I love and will continue to love CK2 for as long as I breathe. But what do you think? Let me know your thoughts on CK2 in the comments, and if you enjoyed the video, I hope you leave a like, a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!